Elite Facts presents
11 of the best places in the world to survive the apocalypse. We're not exactly sure how the world will end. It could go down in a tidal wave of nuclear fire, or swamped with hordes of the undead, or perhaps a space rock will catch us off guard one day and crack the planet in half. Who knows? What we do know are some of the best places on Earth to go if you want the best chance of surviving the apocalypse.
11.
Guam. An island in the western Pacific Ocean, Guam has the advantage of being rather remote from the rest of the world, with the exception of a few neighboring islands. The surrounding sea should provide any would-be survivor with plenty of fish, and the island has plenty of animals for hunting. Guam is also famous for its large U.S. military presence, which has given the island plenty of military infrastructure, making it an island fortress in the event of World War III. The relative remoteness from the rest of the world and strong military presence make Guam an ideal place to go to flee zombie hordes or wait out a global conflict. Its location in the middle of the ocean might also be enough to spare it from being targeted with nuclear weapons. And before we forget to mention, Guam has some pretty good beaches and scenery to boot.
10.
Antarctica. The frigid South probably doesn't sound all that hospitable, and while that is true, it is also part of why it's a damn good place to escape the apocalypse. No one is going to look for you there. Movies like The Thing might suggest that this would be a terrible place to be stuck with deadly monsters, but unlike The Thing, it's more of a case of monstrous zombies ever being able to reach Antarctica. Most zombies probably aren't good swimmers, and the cold weather is not likely to make them move very fast. In the event of a nuclear war, Antarctica has nothing worth nuking, unless of course there are any world leaders who really hate penguins. So it would likely escape a lot of the fallout. Various political treaties also help guarantee Antarctica as a safe place from the ravages of war. The continual habitation by scientists also proves people can survive the conditions, though they do have some outside help. That being said, there are probably plenty of fish and penguins to eat if all else fails.
9.
Slab City, California. Built around the ruins of an abandoned military base, Camp Dunlop, Slab City in California's Sonoran Desert is a current-day example of functional anarchy. It's about the closest you'll get to the sort of post-apocalyptical settlements often seen in pop culture. If the world around it were to end, very little in Slab City would likely change. It's more a haven of self-sufficient hippies and beatnik artists than apocalyptic reavers and raiders, so if you're an artsy type, you'll probably fit right in. While this place knows how to survive in the already harsh desert, there are a few problems. Few people live here the whole year round, with summer temperatures rising to unbearable highs. Any sudden climate caused by an apocalyptic event could shake Slab City up a little too much. It might not also be the best defended location in the event of a zombie or post-apocalyptic bandit attack, as hippies tend not to give a lot of time to martial concerns. But it could probably be easily fortified if the need arose. If anything, Slab City is a good place to visit if you want a lesson in surviving the aftermath of doomsday.
8.
The Yukon. The Yukon may be cold and remote, but you may be noticing a trend here. That remoteness is usually a good thing when it comes to surviving the end of days. Located in northwest Canada, the Yukon is vast. There are a few population centers that could continue to sustain themselves as the rest of the world burned, and there is little in the Yukon to attract the attention of nuclear weapons. Drifting fallout from the rest of the world burning may be the biggest worry, but it's questionable just how much that would affect life here. The main advantages in the Yukon are its natural resources. There is a lot of woodland that is teeming with wildlife for hunting and trees for lumber. There's also the gold, a whole lot of gold. For those brave enough to mine it, there's a lot of money to be made in gold. If all the world economic hubs went up in flames or were overrun with zombies, then the people of the Yukon could probably establish themselves as the economic superpower of the post-apocalyptic world, assuming, of course, people still value gold at that point.
7.
Cheyenne Mountain, Colorado. Cheyenne Mountain in Colorado is a lot more than just a piece of pretty scenery. It's home to NORAD. The North American Aerospace Defense Command required a base be built to last in the Cold War, and thus commissioned the building of one hell of a nuclear bunker. If you could somehow get yourself a place inside the facility, assuming you're not already working there, you'd be in a pretty good position to survive doomsday. Completed in 1966, the Cheyenne Mountain Complex is built into the mountain itself and is reinforced to the point that it should be able to brush off a 30-megaton nuclear blast. It also has a network of blast doors and filtration systems to keep chemical, nuclear, and biological contaminants out. Zombies ain't getting in either. Drawing on the springs from inside the mountain, the base can also remain self-sustaining for quite a while. This mountain facility is probably one of the safest places in the world, if you don't mind living inside a mountain for a few years while the rest of the world calms down.
6.
Mount Yamantau, Republic of Bashkortostan, Russia. As we've established with Cheyenne Mountain, the insides of mountains make for pretty good bunker locations. And if the mountain is tucked away in a rather remote location, then all the better. Mount Yamantau in the Republic of Bashkortostan is home to what is believed to be Russia's answer to the Cheyenne Mountain facility. U.S. satellites observed excavations around the mountain in the early 1990s, not long before the fall of the USSR. The Russian government has given many varying statements on the actual purpose of the excavations, including justifying it as a mining operation or a treasury repository. The Russian government is reluctant to tell anyone what's actually going on at the site, but what we can glean is that it is something that is probably being built to survive an apocalyptic event. It's quite possible the site itself is home to a large number of Russia's nuclear weapons, including components of Russia's Death's Hand response system. You'd think this would make it a target of nuclear weapons itself, but given the insides of the site are probably near indestructible, you could likely take shelter quite peacefully as the world burned right above you. This is assuming you could ever get access to the place, and that you speak Russian.
5.
Svalbard, Norway. Cold and full of polar bears, you might think the Arctic islands of Svalbard don't have a lot going for them. But right at the north tip of the world, it's a good place to head to when the end of the world is nigh, for much of the same reasons as Antarctica is in the south. Its status as a demilitarized zone, in addition to its remoteness, means that it's not likely to become a target during a major conflict, and any diseases or zombies would have difficulty making their way to the islands. If you mean to do more than just survive the end of the world and want to go back and re-establish civilization in the wake of the apocalypse, then Svalbard is probably ideal. The islands are home to the Svalbard Vault, which is a scientific project dedicated to preserving all the seeds of plant life on Earth. This means that just about any plant has a backup set of seeds preserved in the icy temperatures of the vault should they ever go extinct. In the event of the apocalypse, the Svalbard Global Seed Vault means that essential crops can be grown anew, should something like corn or wheat ever go the way of the dinosaurs.
4.
The Isle of Lewis, Scotland. Located among the Scottish Outer Hebrides, the Isle of Lewis has more than you'd expect going for it when it comes to surviving the apocalypse. Being a Hebridean island, it has that element of remoteness going for it, and that means it's probably safe from zombie hordes, and it's not likely to ever be a primary target in the event of global thermonuclear war. The local communities on the island have a long history of self-sufficiency, which means that food and water are not likely to be hard to come by. What's more, if you really want to party as the world burns, the Isle of Lewis is famed for its whiskey. You could make a good life for yourself enjoying some of the finest scotch and running a farm on your new island home while the rest of the world goes to hell.
3.
Western Australia. Apocalyptic Australia probably has you thinking of Mad Max, but Australia as a whole has a pretty good chance of coming away from the apocalypse in better shape than those movies would have you believe. Australia may be a very large and modern country, but it is quite far removed from the rest of the world in the event of a global conflict. Western Australia would be especially safe in the event of an apocalypse. It's quite far removed from the rest of Australia, never mind the rest of the world. The city of Perth is a bustling modern city and is quite likely to survive a global war, given its location, so you might not have to go without urban comforts should you choose it as your new home in the post-apocalypse. What's more is that Western Australia already has a strong economy, producing over half of Australia's cattle for export. That will also probably survive. In addition to all the cattle you'd have for food, The region is also good at producing wool for clothing and produces a variety of seafoods, all increasing the chances of a happy post-apocalypse in Western Australia. It also has coal mines, reserves of natural gas, and crude oil to boot, meaning the standard of living ought not to drop when the rest of the world ends. Being that it's Australia, you probably won't be worrying about zombies or mutants, given that some of the wildlife is already more terrifying than those sci-fi creations. Unless, of course, 6-foot mutant funnel web spiders become a thing.
2,
Iceland. Land of ice and fire, Iceland is Europe's most remote country, and as stressed several times before, that's a damn good thing when it comes to waiting out the apocalypse. Iceland is already a thriving modern country, with plenty of natural beauty going for it too. It might get a little cold in the winter, but you could always retire to a hot spring for a little extra warmth. Again, there is little reason for Iceland to be a direct target of nuclear attacks, and should zombies ever become a reality, it's cut off enough from the rest of the world to stop them. Assuming the end of the rest of the world doesn't shake Iceland too much, as a survivor in Iceland you could probably expect to enjoy a continuation of their welfare system, and at least some continuation of their universal health care. The environment can be as unforgiving as it is beautiful at times, but if generations of Norsemen have called Iceland home, then you probably can too with a little perseverance. Of course, there are always its cities, like the capital Reykjavik, which has plenty of modern comforts. Iceland's waters also have plenty of fish for food, so feeding yourself is not going to be an issue either, provided of course that you can tolerate some particularly fishy cuisine.
1,
Switzerland. Cheese, chocolate, and skiing. Switzerland has a lot going for it already, but in the event of the apocalypse, the entire country is ready to become a self-sufficient mountain fortress. Switzerland has always had a history of neutrality in warfare, so the country is likely to be spared the direct wrath of nuclear weapons, so the fallout from surrounding Europe would be the main worry. As for any unwanted visitors trying to force their way into Switzerland, they're all going to have a hard time because the country is just about uninvadable. There's at least 3,000 demolition points at strategic locations throughout Switzerland that can close off bridges and mountain passes. This means the country can seal itself off from the rest of the world and take down any country foolish enough to attack it as they seal up. The population of Switzerland are also armed to the teeth, as every man takes compulsory military service at age 19, and when discharged they are required by law to keep and maintain their weapons. Plus, everyone probably has a Swiss Army knife, and those things are handy. Anyway, invading forces or even zombies would be shot to pieces by the Swiss militia if they haven't already had a mountainside dropped on them. And if you still think that Switzerland would be royally screwed if anyone did send a nuke their way, they've spent the last 50 years building bomb shelters in every family home. In total, Switzerland has bunker space for 9 million people, which is slightly more than their current total population. Switzerland is basically a quaint but modern European country that is more than prepared for the apocalypse. If you want to survive the end of the world in both reasonable comfort and with some stunning alpine views, then Switzerland is the place for you.
Don't forget to like us and subscribe for more elite facts.